This is the story of a race of beings known as humans that started out on a small planet in the Sol system. Humans from their very early beginnings have always been warmongers, prone to greed and corruption at all levels, violent, merciless, and relentless in their pursuit of money and power. Along with these terrifying characteristics, however, they were also capable of great love, compassion, and beauty through architecture, technology, and artistic creativity. After surviving their own dark ages, moving into industry and eventually spaceflight, the human race slowly started turning its attention towards greater things like science and exploration. It took humans nearly 25,000 years to stop fighting amongst themselves long enough to look towards the stars and exploration. The first manned deep space exploration came about when a brilliant eccentric scientist named John Aaron invented a fusion engine, one that could propel a small spacecraft great distances. Aaron's unorthodox approach to science was exactly what they needed to break the local system barrier. The first extra-system human colony is named Aaron, after John's daring flight to the distant star ended in a fiery explosion on the planet's surface. The human president commemorated his heroics by naming the star system after him. Before any of the new colonies could become self-sufficient, the usual uprising of conflict and corruption began across the 6 human star systems. It started with a revolt on Delta II, as the occupants of the colony demanded more support from their home world, which was already stretching their budgets beyond a breaking point in its expansion effort, and when the Deltans began to starve, an uprising was sure to follow. Small skirmishes between local police and rebels eventually escalated to all-out war on the Delta II planet surface, which, once the Sol military was called in, only exacerbated the problems on the planet's surface even further. Bombardment and arrest, confinements and rounding up insurgents almost turned into a new holocaust when one man stepped forward as a self-proclaimed leader of the rebels, a former Sol Alliance soldier-gone mercenary named Chance Valheim. Chance did in fact lead the rebels, giving them at least a fighting chance against the very military that trained him. He is a ruthless tactician, pulling no punches when it comes to winning. The soldiers under his command secretly whispered that his name should be No Chance, though when Chance himself heard these rumors, he rather liked the title. On the Solas research planet and home of the North Foundation, Abel North, a technological genius trillionaire of great renown, was working on new technologies to help grow food and provide shelter in the harsh, inhospitable environments such as Delta II. Abel and his team made an astounding breakthrough that was sure to solve the problem on Delta II, as well as provide a safe option to colonize other harsher climates successfully. The technology included enhancements to biospheres and hydroponics farms, as well as newly invented solutions for terraforming an entire planet's surface to make it more hospitable. Also, various toxic processors and gargantuan planetary radiation shields that would attempt to block inhospitable radiation coming from the Deltan star, thus causing less infection and sickness. These breakthroughs were almost as celebrated as that first fateful flight of John Aaron. By the time the environmental tech was ready to deploy, Delta II was almost a smoldering ruin. The ground fighting escalated to orbital bombardment by the Sol Alliance military had left the planet in what many thought was an unrecoverable state. Abel North sent his daughter, Anna, an equally as brilliant scientist and negotiator, to mediate between the military and the Deltans to attempt to stop the slaughter. Her mission was to contact No Chance Valheim and get him to stand down. No one thought this was possible because by now Chance was consumed with hate towards Sol and the government that cowardly bombed him from outer space. Anna, however, went down to Delta II alone. She refused armed guards and proceeded to meet with Chance with only a portable unit to demonstrate the effects of these wondrous inventions. The initial introduction of Anna to Chance was not a pleasant moment in her life. With guns to her head in a room full of angry insurgents, she calmly and respectfully stated why she was here and what she had in her hands. No Chance gave her a chance, after all. Anna demonstrated some possible solutions to the leaders of the rebels, and surprisingly to everyone, especially Anna, the guns were put away, and the negotiations began. One condition: Chance Valheim and his other leaders had to stand down and be held responsible for hostility against their government, which made Chance want to shoot everyone in the room, but he did not. He agreed, and off to prison he went, happy that his home was finally safe and prosperous. It took about 3 years, but Delta II was a viable planet in the end, supporting millions of happy, healthy human inhabitants. Likely when the huge planetary radiation shield was brought online, it piqued the interest of other inhabitants of the galaxy, as one might expect. The first to arrive on Sol's doorstep were the Psilons, a short blue multi-appendage species with huge black eyes and an enormous skull. Human mediators would come to understand this was because their brains were 6 times the size of a normal human, and the Psilons possessed an absurdly astonishing knack for science and technology.
You are a welcome sight, stranger.
Their demeanor was very non-aggressive and in fact almost pacifist in nature. The Psilon representatives immediately provided the humans with enhancements to the already brilliant scientific discoveries of Abel North, which made them seem like child's toys by comparison.
Farewell, stranger.
Shortly after meeting the Psilons, another race made contact, the Meklar. The human diplomats were not sure what to make of this species because they were clearly cybernetic, and in fact wholly machine-based it would appear. Initial dealings with the Meklar seemed hostile because they have no emotional responses, no personality, at least not yet understood.
Greetings. What is your query?
The Meklar did not reveal much about themselves other than they were interested in trade and research treaties. The Sol scientists started receiving massive dumps of data so fast and so large, the quantum computers they were so proud of were set ablaze and shut down. The Meklar were apologetic and offered to help fix those inefficiencies.
Parameters accepted.
All in the same year, another race made contact with the human embassies, a race known as Alkari. These bird-like beings were very polite, friendly, offering compliments and almost worship upon their first meeting with the humans.
The blessings of the Sky God be upon you, Earthbound.
They offered no tech nor treaties, and in fact refused so politely it was hard to be offended by the kind Alkari representatives.
Have you thought this through?
What the humans did learn, though, was that the Alkari had been at war with the Meklar for centuries, deep inside the galaxy where no human has ever seen.
May the wind carry you to paradise, my friend.
This unsettling fact would have a major impact on the future of humanity on a galactic scale. The Great Human Expanse was well underway, now totaling 11 colonies across 9 star systems. The human race felt pretty successful and proud of themselves by this point. Soon after, another diplomat showed up in Sol, demanding to speak to the president. She was at least 7 feet tall, bluish skin covering nothing but pure muscle and astonishing bright blue eyes, almost as if they were glowing. She was the representative of a race called Elerian, and described her species as proud militaristic warriors not to be toyed with.
Stand at attention when you address me, maggot!
And not to toy with is exactly what the human delegates were sure to do. It was suspected that this woman could tear a grown man in two with her bare hands. After some delicate negotiations, she boastfully and belligerently announced her species was at war with not only the Alkari, but also the Meklar. Very proud she was. She explained that they were warring with the Meklar first, as were the Alkari, and when the Alkari showed how spineless they were, coming to the Elerian for an alliance, Draconis opened fire on their delegation and blew them from the sky. Very proud she was. She further explained, while smashing a few marble tables to bits, that the filthy beast Alkari have taken their homeworld of Draconis, but will soon reclaim it in glorious battle to the death with the birdmen. For now, the Elerian live on Jabbar, a disgusting little dust bowl. Once the chest beating and boasting was over, the Elerians showed their much calmer side and revealed, quite accidentally, their telepathic capabilities. Some less militaristic scientist types began to teach humans about their telepathic abilities, and through science supplied by the Psilons, and unbeknownst to them, mind you, the humans and Elerians began to cultivate implants for humans to enhance their latent telepathic capabilities. The human president was enamored with the large, powerful woman, though later no one could say this wasn't mind control, and the two began a secret love affair that lasted years, and ended abruptly with his assassination at the hands of his lover. The human community was enraged. The Elerian spy was captured and put to death without a trial. The Elerian dictatorship swore revenge. With millions of humans across dozens of star systems calling for Elerian blood, the Sol Alliance joined forces with the Alkari, and by proxy the Meklar, in a final assault on the remaining Elerian colonies.
seems our past friendship will be one more casualty of this war.
Together, the human and Alkari forces drove back the Elerian to one final ground assault, led ironically by the now recruited military leader Chance Valheim after a 10-year prison sentence, and the Elerian dictatorship was no more. With their empire crushed, the remaining Elerian race were sent to labor camps on Alkari colonies due to their resilience and immense strength and fortitude, and any uprising or resurgence was swiftly put down until there were only a few thousand Elerians left alive out of a once thriving race of millions. The humans had now experienced war for the first time with someone outside their own race. This left a very uncomfortable sense hanging in the air, a foreboding feeling that this was an entirely new playing field, and some knew the humans had no idea what they were about to get themselves into. Soon after, attentions turned towards electing a new president, and there was only one sensible option at this point: Abel North, for his extensive work in science and diplomacy. His daughter Anna was very proud, as was her husband, Fleet Commander Valheim. The two had become very close while working together during the war effort. No one was surprised, especially not No Chance Valheim. When the first transmission came from the Sacra, everyone in the room screamed and ran for cover.
Hello, Mighty One.
The Sacra delegate sat in his chair laughing. This reptilian being had to be around 11 feet tall, weighing in at no less than 1,500 pounds. Enormous does not do it justice. However, once the delegate started speaking, all could see he was a jovial but serious, honor-bound soldier who merely wanted to extend an invitation to exchange embassies.
Far into history back, we've been friended. Happy to oblige you.
The humans were terrified. This guy was massive, but had quite a thunderous laugh that shook the walls even through the holographic systems. During this first meeting, the humans learned that yet another war was raging at the far reaches of the galaxy. The Sacra themselves were expansionists and warmongers, but he swore they didn't start this conflict. They were at war on three fronts: the Psilons, Meklar, and Alkari. One of the human delegates whispered they were probably at war with the Elerian too until we put them down. And the Sacra, with adept hearing, barked back at the humans saying, "You're damn right. The Sacra would have taken down those blue witches had they not already been fighting 3 other wars," as he sits back in his chair proudly grinning. It was then, in that uncomfortable silence, the Sacra almost reluctantly asked the Sol Alliance if they could spare a few warships and soldiers to help them out. Seems they're in a bind, as the Psilon are wiping them out. With a quick deliberation and consulting President North, the humans gave their answer: "Sorry, but we cannot get involved with those races on that level." The Sacra hung his head slightly and said, "Well, it doesn't hurt to ask. Besides, we're too busy to worry about conquering you too. Maybe later." And he looked straight into the viewport and grinned, winked, and disconnected.
Bye-bye now.
And that was the last time anyone spoke to a Sacra, as the Psilons quickly obliterated them from existence.
This is GNN.
Distress mounts among the sentient races as the Sacra culture disappears quietly into the eternal night. The mighty Sacra are no more.
At long last, the galaxy appeared to be stabilizing, at least for the human expansion. The Elerian and Sacra were gone. The Psilon, Alkari, and Meklar were fighting amongst themselves, and the humans were left to peacefully expand and colonize new star systems. By this time, there were 17 off-world colonies up and running, fairly successfully, with only a few skirmishes with local pirates or small upstart rebellions that No Chance put down swiftly or left to the delicate negotiations of Anna North. The humans were getting a constant feed of technological breakthroughs from the brilliant Psilons and applying them to their own growth, expansion, and scientific efforts. Oddly, the Psilons never asked for a thing in return. No technology, no favors, no sides. This started making some people very nervous. They were not sure what their motivation was.
A most agreeable conclusion.
Aside from the small military fleet used against the Elerians years ago, the Sol Alliance was ill-prepared for what came next. In a trade negotiation with the Meklar, A human representative mistakenly traded some high-level Psilon technology to the Meklar, who were at war with the Psilon. If it matters, the humans were unaware of this new warfront. And soon after, a powerful Psilon fleet appeared in the human system of Finau and laid it to waste. Before the bombardment, the Psilon announced,
Our predictions show increasingly favorable odds should an armed conflict break out between us. Fascinating, isn't it? We regret this, but our calculations leave us no other course of action.
The attacking fleet may have been shocked to learn how quickly the human scientists and builders integrated the Psilon tech into their planetary defenses. As one battle station, a missile base, and an orbital battery took out 90% of the attacking force. Ultimately, the Psilon did win the day, and Finau was reduced to smoldering rubble. The Psilon then quickly moved to Finau 2 and did the same thing. In all, 17 million humans lost their lives in less than 20 minutes. The entire human civilization went utterly mad. Even mild-mannered President Abel North was said to utter, "Kill them all." From beginning to end, the Psilon War raged for over 17 years on the human calendar. Billions of lives were lost on both sides. Victories were hollow and meaningless, but rage was all-consuming. With every fallen soldier, every disintegrated civilian ship or transport, the human hatred towards the Psilon race grew exponentially. There was one human characteristic that reigned supreme: their ability to capitalize on their hatred of other races, starting with their own pre-warp wars on their homeworld, going back to the beginnings of their civilization all the way through very recently when they took to the stars and still had internal conflict and hate, until the Psilons showed up with guns. For the first time in human history, 100% of the human species were solidified under one banner to end the existence of the bubbleheads. There was no longer conflict between humans, and even space pirates who saw what was happening joined the military. Every conceivable credit was squeezed out of every colony, and human laborers worked double and triple shifts to ensure the war effort had the production it needed to build a retaliatory fleet, and fast. President Abel North even put on his lab coat again and reinstituted the North Foundation to further research and enhance the Psilon, Meklar, and Alkari tech the humans had received over the years. It is important to note, the humans only had 19 colonies at this point, consisting of no more than 190 billion citizens. This was a fraction of the resources the Psilons had, on top of 10% of the technological knowledge of this new enemy. Yet another human characteristic worth noting is their resilience, their fortitude, and their sheer will to fight until the last breath for their liberties and freedoms. The timeline of the Psilon War is as follows. On that fateful day, Finau Prime received the incoming Psilon fleet like they had a dozen times before, completely unprepared for the first volley of torpedoes. They were annihilated so quickly, it is thought no one had time to even be surprised. The Sol Alliance was not prepared for the conflict either, especially not with a technologically superior force. They lost millions of lives in every attack before they could flee the oncoming war machine. To add insult to injury, the humans learned that this was just a scouting fleet that the Psilons sent before the real invasion force arrived. Every human battleship built lasted one round of conflict, mostly because they were merely cobbled together as battering rams to try to simply take out Psilon fighters. It was beyond hopeless. This unexpected war was costing the entire human civilization trillions of credits each battle, but thankfully, many of Sol's wealthy inhabitants contributed to the cause generously. While the factories churned out warships ranging from small frigates to cruisers and battleships, most were destroyed almost effortlessly in the first moments of battle. That is, until the scientists of the North Foundation discovered a technology the Psilons provided that no one previously understood, something called hard shields. As simple as it sounds, It appears the Psilon weaponry is tuned to pierce the shields of targeted ships, and this hard shield could negate that effect, giving the ship a better chance of surviving that initial blast. Further breakthroughs in torpedo technology provided by the Meklar, the fleet was now armed with proton torpedoes. Although targeting moving objects was like throwing a rock at a passing ship, when they do land, the torpedoes did insane amounts of damage. Abel North named the first cruiser Psykiller, outfitted with 10 proton torpedoes and a displacement device, allowing the cruiser to jump in close, fire its payload, and jump back out to safety. With that configuration, the humans won their first battle against the Psilon fleet, and now they have a strategy and redesigned many of their cruisers with the Psykiller or PK tech. Many years ago, during a deep space expedition, one of the North Foundation's researchers unearthed evidence of a mythological race known as ORION. The fable speaks of a world deep in the core of the galaxy that holds the secrets to staggering technologies. This, of course, was merely a myth, but in the off chance that the Orions did once exist, it would be most advantageous to discover this technology. Anna North decided to go find Orion. Anna, working closely with Chance now for 20 years, has added tactical brilliance to her already stunning resume of talents. This put her in command of one of Sol Alliance's premium warships, the North Star. President North, Anna's father, commissioned a special ship, a Titan class, fitted with the best weapons and defenses in the human arsenal. The Meklar provided highly advanced computer systems and workers to help build the North Star, named as such in the hopes that she will help the human race find its way. Abel then assigned the ship to Anna and wished her luck in her search for Orion and its secrets. Once the humans started beating small Psilon fleets, the Psilon seemed to disappear for a while, perhaps rethinking their strategy, or more than likely building a bigger beast. Taking advantage of the quiet period, humans began rebuilding their science facilities in the hopes of advancing their own knowledge and technology quickly while they had the chance. They also never stopped building ships, and finally reached a point where the cost of the fleets was throwing this entire civilization into critical debt. No one, not even the former trillionaires, could help at this point. The human delegates begged and pleaded with the Alkari ministries to help financially or with technological breakthroughs, but the Alkari refused to get involved. However, the Meklar seemed very eager, as they were already at war with the Psilon and the Alkari, so technological advances coming from them were helpful, though that still did not yield a bigger fleet. At this point, the humans needed an overwhelming force to survive, not a sharper stick. Human scouting fleets and colonies on the fringes of Meklar space kept reporting non-stop bombardment activity on Meklar colonies.
This is GNN.
It is a dog-eat-dog galaxy out there as the military might of the Alkari flock battle against the Meklar Combine for control of the galaxy.
Every time Meklan tried to recolonize a world they lost to Alkari bombardment, the Alkari would simply return and bomb it to rubble again. This activity was relentless, and President North pleaded with the Alkari representative to cease hostilities against Meklan. How this machine race seemed like innocent children simply trying to learn and grow and coexist. The Alkari diplomat sharply informed President North that he has no idea what he's talking about and he should mind his own business. Disposition between human and Alkari dropped considerably that day. During this quiet period, the president also re-established colonization efforts, since the only way to build a strong defense is with stockpiles of resources. The human civilian fleets dispatched in all directions, searching for viable planets, or even hostile environments that were rich in minerals needed for production. During this effort, an Alkari trade minister, sympathetic to the human plight, offers a solution to the military command point cost. Jubilantly, the human manufacturing effort can build almost twice the number of ships as before. The humans go with Titans only, outfitting them with heavy armor, hulls, and hard shields, and jump capabilities similar to the PKs. Also on board are the newly invented mass drivers, graviton cannons, and Meklan-provided supercomputers to augment targeting solutions. A major turning point in this war was when the North Foundation came up with a new class of Titan, called the Dreadnought. It took only a few months to build the first Dreadnought, which was outfitted with new fighter and bomber bays and as many heavy mass drivers as could fit on its immense hull. The Dreadnought class was a stunning piece of machinery, enormous in size, rigged with a ton of hull and armor strength and a horde of weapon mount points. The humans filled every crack and crevice with guns, bombs, torpedoes, and interceptors. During its first test flight in the Glide system, the Psilons showed up, ending their run of silence. They sent their usual scouting fleet of 2 cruisers and 6 destroyers, and when they came out of the warp point, they were smack dab in front of the new human dreadnought. Thanks to the quick reactions of Rear Admiral Chance Valheim, the dreadnought targeted all 8 ships, launched 5x5 waves of interceptors and bombers, which were upon the Psilon fleet in seconds. To say they didn't know what hit them would be an understatement. The single human ship obliterated 2 Psilon cruisers and 6 destroyers in a matter of 30 seconds. Rear Admiral Chance Valheim was later quoted as screaming at the battle monitors, "What, you bring a knife to a gunfight?" This is apparently an old human expression. With the discovery of this new superweapon at their disposal, plus the new Titan gunners rolling off the assembly line almost daily, the Sol Alliance finally felt like they had caught a break. It was nearly 3 years before anyone saw a Psilon again in Sol-controlled space. Conveniently, at this time, a mysterious benefactor donates hundreds of trillions of credits to the human war effort. No one knows who. It wasn't another human, they were expensed out. Some say it was the Alkari, keeping things on the down low. Other rumors began to surface that it was in fact the mythological Orions themselves. Either way, the credits helped optimize command point expense and hire half a dozen more military leaders from all galactic races that brought command experience, enabling more ships to be commanded at once. The human fleets were growing, and fast. Soon after, the Psilon began attacking from systems they stole from the Sacra, which lay between Sol and Alkari space. Scouts learned there was a wormhole deep in the former Sacra territory that led directly to Psilon space, which is how they were able to annihilate the Sacra so quickly. There was no way the Sol fleet could block the wormhole because it was 7 systems beyond their reach, so a decision was made. "We're going to take the systems," was the daring declaration by Admiral Valheim. The president agreed, and off to NINSAR went the first mighty fleet of the Sol Alliance, consisting of 5 each Titan gunners, dreadnoughts, battleship missile boats, and gunboats, 10 each cruiser-class guns, Psi-killers, and destroyers armed with gauze cannons. On paper, this looked like an amazing fleet, but would it stand up to Psilon technology? The battle at NINSAR was a marked victory for the Sol Alliance, who only lost 1 Psi-killer, which unfortunately was expected due to their Blitz-style attack runs. Still, shouting and jubilation could be heard all the way to the North Foundation, 10,000 light-years away. As Chance was chasing the Psilons back to their wormhole in Sacra space, the Antarans paid them a visit, which most firmly believe turned the tide even further for the humans in this conflict. The Antaran fleet was swift and deadly, and decimated the Actius system within hours. Meanwhile, Anna North and her fleet led by the North Star just spent over 8 years out on the fringes of the galaxy after learning the suspected location of Orion at the core of the galaxy was in fact a myth. But diligent research, making contacts with various minor races, and asking the right questions, a skill she was absolutely best at, finally put her on the right track to the outer arm of the galaxy beyond Meklar space. At long last, the Gaia planet Orion was directly in front of her, and between her and Orion was the Guardian. Being both a brilliant analyst and tactician, Anna and her team quickly devised a scheme to defeat the Guardian of Orion by using a classic cat-and-mouse approach. This is apparently another human expression. It meant asking people to sacrifice their lives for the greater good, which is something Anna was not comfortable with, but her advisors convinced her there was no other way. The tactic was to send in smaller, faster ships to lure the Guardian after them, while the North Star and the other Titans and battle cruisers got into position at a safe distance, and using battle scanners, structural analyzers, and rangemaster units, try to blast as much of the Guardian away as possible, and make a run for it if they had to, before everyone was annihilated. The Guardian was immense, almost a quarter the size of Orion's moon itself. No one had ever seen a vessel that big. The mouse was sent in, and as expected, the Guardian pursued. Anna and her fleet positioned and targeted what they estimated were the weakest spots of the Guardian, and once it was engaged with the smaller ships, the North Star and her fleet of battleships opened fire. It was a grueling battle that seemed to last forever, though in reality it was only about 5 minutes. Anna's fleet lost nearly all of their smaller ships, from cruisers down to frigates, and a couple of battleships, 2 battle cruisers before the Guardian fell. The North Star fleet had left Sol long before the first dreadnought was created, or this battle might have ended differently. The loss of life was so great, no one cheered when the Guardian exploded. Even retrieving the fabled Orion treasures didn't seem worth it in the end. But it's the long run that matters.
This is GNN, Galactic News Network.
The mighty Human Republic has taken control of the Orion system.
With what Anna and her team retrieved from Orion's vaults, the North Foundation made gargantuan breakthroughs on a number of research projects, and the North Star gets a well-deserved upgrade. It took over 2 years for the North Foundation, the smartest humans in the galaxy, literally to crack some of the secrets of Orion's vaults. The humans were very secretive with their new discoveries and did not involve their friends or allies in the research efforts as a defensive strategy. They learned all too well that friends are only friends until they set out to annihilate your entire species.
Researchers at the new Orion colony have discovered ancient blueprints for fantastic new technologies.
The first discovery to come out of Orion's cache was the invention of the Death Ray, described as the most devastating energy beams known in the galaxy, literally vaporizing the toughest armor known to exist, so equipping ships with a shield-stripping weapon and multiple Death Rays is what came off the assembly line next. A Titan-class ship named Beamer. They even had little sunbursts painted on their hull. The next discovery was Zentronium armor, which naturally is harder to melt with a Death Ray than all other known armors. Finally, a startling and terrifying technology known as a black hole generator, which does exactly what the name implies on a microscopic level. Black holes are so immensely powerful, one the size of one atom could devour a starship. This weapon, once range-tested, scared scientists so badly they demanded Abel North disassemble it and never use it again. Abel thus instructed a fleet of ships to be built, each one containing a black hole generator, along with warp dissipators, wide-area net jammers. These ships were not designed for melee combat, but for sitting just out of range, preventing enemy ships from jumping into hyperspace to flee battle, then locking them down in massive black hole event horizons while the main fleet lines up their best shots. This was astonishingly effective and completely turned the tide of the Psilon-human conflict. Abel's reasoning was no Psilon ship will escape justice from this day forward. We kill them all. In a startling twist, the Alkari suddenly offer an alliance with the humans. Startling because previously they were not even willing to set up research treaties until now. Most suspect it's because spies learned the humans just found Orion, and the Alkari want that tech. At this point, we should pause the Psilon-human conflict story to talk about the Meklar race. As mentioned before, they seem to be a completely cybernetic sentient race of computers and systems, and it is suspected that every single Meklar is somehow linked to a central mind or hub, possibly located on their homeworld of Meklan, though it is unlikely they would be that careless. That would be the first place to strike to take out an entire race. Some theorize their network is somehow linked to quantum space. Either way, the Meklar are unique for multiple reasons. As one would expect, they are devoid of emotion, so there's no shock and awe. There's no jealousy, greed, power-mongering, at least not as other races would define it. And President North said it best when begging the Alkari to back down from bombing them, that the Meklar seem like wide-eyed, knowledge-starved children who just want to learn, absorb, and, like everybody else, expand their territory. Some people on the Sol Trade Commission and diplomatic teams started noticing odd behavioral changes in communications with the Meklar around 10 years ago. The Meklar representative seemed to always start diplomatic sessions with,
"We are enraptured by your transmission.
and sometimes when the session is ending, they wished us
Goodbye, and have a nice solar period."
This may seem unimportant to just anyone, but think about it. The Meklar are AI. They are artificial intelligence, computers and/or machines, whose only goal is to exist and expand. They do not make jokes. They do not sing songs, and they certainly do not wish anyone to have a good day. This began to alarm some of the soul scientists who have a working theory that the Meklar are learning behavioral patterns from human contact. Mimics, if you will. It started to make sense to some why the Meklar were so enthusiastic to help humans, aside from the calculated risk that by helping humans, that they would join their war effort against those bringing them destruction. The concern is, if you strip away all the human-like appearance and behaviors and think of the Meklar as cold, calculating computers and/or cyborgs, it is chilling to imagine what kind of things they are learning from a race that is very self-absorbed, puts self-interest above the greater good, and intentionally goes out of their way to exterminate anyone who does them harm or stands in their way of progress. The Meklar watch. Whenever a major situation was occurring, analysts had noticed Meklar was always present, in the background usually. They blend right in with the regular tech as they are tech themselves, so you would almost not notice their presence unless you were looking for them. This startled a lot of human theorists. These warnings and concerns were brought up numerous times to the Soul Alliance authorities, but it seems humanity was on the brink of extinction and would rather risk making a deal with the devil, or the devil you know, to quote more human expressions, than to withdraw from negotiations and possibly be the next species to get exterminated. Returning to the Human-Psilon War, human scouting fleets saw something they could not quite comprehend. It appeared like a small moon, self-propelled, heading through Meklar space, surrounded by Psilon warships. It was so massive it blotted out the galactic core visually, and created gravitational fluxes that messed with instruments at times. It gave off incredible energy. One scout was quoted as saying, "That's no moon, that's a space station." What happened next defies all reason and sensibility. This Doomstar opens a massive gun port aimed at a Meklar colony planet and fires a plasma beam so massive it rips into the core of the planet itself, causing a chain reaction that leads to the entire planet exploding into massive chunks and asteroids. No one could survive this event. The scouts were so shaken, they not only left the system, they flew all the way back to Sol to report their experience. Sol scientists and military technicians watched on their monitor screens as this giant machine went from system to system, obliterating planets in its path. It didn't matter if it was populated with 30 million Meklar or an empty planetoid caught in orbit. The Psilons were literally erasing the Meklar from existence. It was assumed that this was a field test for their newest weapon for deployment against the humans. After months of watching in horror, the Soul Alliance sends a dozen Titans and battleships to try to deal with this menace. Every one of those ships and crew on that mission were annihilated by one ship known as a Doomstar, the largest manufactured object in space. Meklan requested help from the Soul Alliance, and unfortunately there was nothing they could do alone. Sympathizing with Meklan, President North demanded Altar to go to war with the Psilon due to these atrocities. The Alkari diplomat was so outraged, and their disposition towards the human turned to utter hatred for suggesting such a thing. It is, after all, more beneficial for them being allied with the Psilons than being their next victim, so the request was denied, and the Alkari refused any future communication attempts from Sol. The humans and Meklar were truly alone against this monster, and once again the humans braced for war on a second front. While the Soul Alliance moved defensive ships and armaments into place along the Sol and Altar borders, no declarations of war came from Altar, nor were there any attacks from Alkari forces. It appeared the showboating was just that, all talk, no action. This allowed time for the Soul Alliance to clear out all Psilon presence in the space between Sol and Altar, claiming numerous systems and their productivity for Sol, including not one but two wormholes to explore. The first led directly to the Psilon front door of Mentar. A scouting fleet emerged at the Exisco system and was immediately targeted and destroyed. The Psilons now know the humans are coming. The human fleets drew a line in space, cutting the Psilons off from their economic partnership with the Alkari. Since the Alkari wouldn't take a side against the planet-destroying monsters, the humans could only sever their supply lines. From the wormhole to the Halley system was cut off. The second wormhole led to Meklon space, and the returning scout reported coming out of the wormhole to witness the Psilon Doomstar pulverizing the Shiko system. After Anna North's success against the Orion Guardian, she began to devise a strategy to take down this Doomstar. Anna could not sit by any longer and just watch this horrific destruction. Something had to be done. She takes the North Star fleet, now equipped with dreadnoughts, and goes after the Doomstar. Upon arriving in the Shiko system and seeing nothing but rubble, the entire Sol fleet held their breath. In the distance, a hulking mass was moving laterally across the field of debris. It was millions of miles away, yet its mass could be seen with the naked eye. This sent most of the crews into a panic, wanting to run, but Anna and her other fleet admirals soothed their fears, explaining that this thing needed to be stopped here and now, at any cost. Admirals Valheim, Storm, a Meklar agent, and NTJA, a shrewd ex-Psilon defector and military strategist, led 3 of the 4 fleets into the system to flank the beast. Anna and her dreadnoughts punched a hole right down the middle towards it. It was staggering to the mind how big this Psilon vessel became the closer they got to it, until it blotted out the entire view of the galaxy behind it. Armed with every technology at their disposal, and dozens of highly sophisticated warships, including Meklar fleets that saw the battle raging and jumped in with every last ship they could spare. Even fleets of human space pirates were seen strafing the planetoid, taking out weapon turrets where they could. One Sol ship even reported seeing what looked like a small contingent of Alkari transports armed with weaponry taking a couple of shots to help where they can. In the end, the battle raged for hours. Hundreds of ships were lost, thousands of human lives, Meklar pilots and soldiers, but Anna was victorious. The North Star was burned up pretty bad, but they had endured and won the day, and the Psilon Doomstar was defeated. Researchers and salvage teams quickly gathered what they could and headed back to the North Foundation. They had a new blueprint to draft. Once again, the hero of the day was Anna North, an analyst turned strategist and tactician who was the only one that believed it could be done, defeating a giant. By the 16th year, the Sol Alliance fleet was so enormous and well-tuned, and the crews trained by years of furious battles against a superior enemy, nothing was stopping the wave of destruction. There were 4 large fleets, each with dedicated fleet admirals and no less than 70 ships per fleet, surrounding the Psilon Empire on all sides, pressing in on the enemy towards their home of Mentar. Psilons were down to their last 10 star system and dared to call for a truce.
I may have rushed to some decisions in the past. I would recant my actions, if you'll allow it.
President North was reported to quip, "We'll sign a truce right after your entire race is eaten by a space dragon."
How distressing.
The Psilon did not find the humor in this. 17 years after the Psilon sneak attack on Finau Prime, the war was coming to an end. Every Psilon system had been taken over by Sol Alliance, hundreds of millions of Psilon civilians captured as prisoners of war. Mentar, the capital of the Psilon race, bombed to rubble, and the leaders of the Psilon race imprisoned on their own homeworld for a trial. The diplomatic attaché, the controller of the Psilon Quanta, and the face of the Psilon for 30 years, was gunned down by Chance Valheim in what was an alleged escape attempt, but everyone was pretty certain that was purely a vendetta. At long last, the war was over. and the Sol Alliance tries to pick up the pieces of its shattered empire. They had been at war so long with such a powerful enemy, most didn't know how to act anymore, now that they were free from that terror, least of which was President Abel North, who, a few months after the conflict ended, suffered a stroke and died, leaving Sol without their gentle, brilliant leader. Without hesitation, the people appointed Fleet Admiral Chance Valheim to lead their Sol Alliance, as he was one of the many heroes of the Psilon War, a great and powerful leader of the Sol Army, and the people still wanted revenge for the losses they suffered. They knew no Chance Valheim was that man to serve them the justice they craved. Chance took office soon after, but continued to command from his newly commissioned Doomstar-class vessel, Annihilator. Immediately following the war, the now President Valheim orders all Psilon civilian POWs sent to labor camps to work off their debt that their leaders incurred when they slaughtered hundreds of billions of humans, Meklar, Sakra, and even Elerians in their wave of terror throughout the galaxy. The people were in agreement, although many believed the civilians had nothing to do with the poor decisions of their leaders. One of those was Anna North. By year 2 of Valheim's leadership, a new edict was handed down. Valheim promised to give back to the Meklar all the territories they had lost to the Psilon Alkari invasions. This seemed like a very noble gesture to the people, and Valheim had their full support. The plan included loading each colony of Psilon civilians into transports and sending them all to the Gadjoa system for relocation. He did not want any outbreaks of violence between the races, after all. Within months, 512 billion Psilon civilians were in orbit around Gadjoa planets as planned. The evacuated colonies were cleaned up, re-outfitted with defenses against Altar, who was still at war with Meklan, and the systems returned to the control of the Meklar combined. Meklan was exceedingly grateful, but they had one more request. In a session with the Meklar representative, Meklan requested graciously that the Sol Alliance declare war on Altar for their continued and very long historical destruction of the Meklan units.
The Combine wishes to initiate trade protocols.
The President's advisors recommended against this action, when the Meklar suggested the humans owe us a debt. This shocked many, that the Meklar just employed a guilt strategy, implying the humans would be long gone now if not for the Meklar support. But President Valheim agreed, and against his advisors, he officially declared war on Altar.
Cooperation modules engaged.
I see. You are so hell-bent on destruction that you'd forsake our trade bonds to quench your thirst for battle.
Not 1 month later, Valheim reveals his actual plan for the Psilon civilians in orbit around Gadjoa. The next system over, which had been blockaded by the Psilon for centuries, was Halley, and living inside that system was an actual space dragon. This is what President North would have wanted, Valheim would convince himself. Valheim ordered the transports programmed for redisbursement in the Halley system, which incites Anna to beg and plead with him to stop. However, his hatred for Psilon is beyond comprehension, and he commits the order. $512 billion Psilon civilians were devoured and destroyed by the enormous dragon as the remaining Psilon leadership were forced to watch from Mentar. Chance then executes the remaining Psilon leaders. The Psilons are no more. Anna is beside herself with grief. Altar watches in horror. Meklan takes note. The Alkari and human races have been at war for years, though not one shot has been fired. The Alkari still benefit from trade and research treaties with the humans now that their benefactors, the Psilons, were gone, even if they hated each other. However, while Chance was on maneuvers in the Exisco system, a zealous Alkari fleet commander took it upon himself to attack the Annihilator while it was alone near a wormhole, and Chance barely escaped with moments to spare. Already fueled by intense non-human hatred, Chance immediately ordered all fleets to attack at will any Alkari asset they see. Most of the fleet admirals at this point were in full agreement, since the sneak attacks on human targets need to stop. Lessons must be taught. As the new Alkari Human War ramps up, the same people that supported all of President Valheim's inhumane decisions against the Psilon civilians now had a change of heart and realized how monstrous that action was, killing so many. The people and the Soul Alliance deposed Chance Valheim as their president, but he did not care. He was aboard the most powerful ship in the galaxy with a loyal fleet of hundreds at his back. He headed towards Altar, crushing Alkari fleets and decimating planets as he goes, leaving only fuel depots standing. Much to the dismay of the human civilization as a whole, the human-Alkari conflict dragged on for another 15 years. This was how long it took for Chance and his leadership to annihilate 687 billion Alkari, all in the name of justice. Chance is repeatedly heard mumbling to himself every time a colony is obliterated. "Take that. Teach you to sit back and watch while my people die." Many people believe he has finally lost his mind, and hoping somebody would do something about his atrocities. Meanwhile, the Meklar fleet has grown quite large, yet human leadership only pauses for a brief moment to notice, then turns back to Alkari business. Chance says it's good to see his old friends getting back on their feet, which must be another human expression, because Meklar have no feet. After decimating every Alkari system in his path towards Altair, Chance opens a communication with the Altair leaders and reads his list of war crimes against the Meklar people. He alone has judged the entire Alkari race to extinction, then gives the order to open fire on Altair with the Annihilator's stellar converter. There is hesitation because Anna has positioned the North Star between Altair and the Annihilator's main battery. She begs Chance to stop, to not do what the Psilons did. This gave Altair the time they needed to fire their own superweapon from their planetary defenses, tearing through the North Star, which was defending them, destroying the Titan. No one survived. Chance explodes with rage, taking the controls of the main cannon himself, destroying the planet Altair. With his mind now shattered, Madman Valheim gave orders to load the Alkari civilians aboard transports and fire them into the nearest star. Before this can happen, though, an assassin's bullet ended the life of Fleet Admiral Chance Valheim, hero of the Psilon-Human War. The final conflict has ended. The Meklar did not understand revenge, nor could they express gratitude. However, one thing they were now fully aware of: extermination. As the other races were now extinct and only the humans and the Meklar remained, peace seemed to exist throughout the galaxy. The humans, not needing such a large military or construction fleet anymore, began to disassemble their war machines, while the Meklar watched on. It was this simplest of misunderstandings that the Meklar realized: when a human no longer needs their machine, they scrap it. The Meklar response was massive and efficient. Using every tactic learned by watching humans at war, the Meklar had little trouble beating humans back to the Sol system where it all began, and with the poetic discharge of a stellar converter, humans took their place among the powerful races that were now extinct.